is. Then all of a sudden he shifts gears to an odd thing. Then he starts talking about this. The eye is the lamp of your body. So your eye is healthy, your whole body be full of light. So let's just talk for a second here. When you walk into a room, and if it's dark, you need to turn on the lamp. And the way Jesus puts it is, your body is like a room. And how do you turn on the light inside the room, which is your body? It's your eye. Your eye is like your lamp. So wherever your eye goes, that's the light that you're putting into your life, into your body. But then he says this really odd thing. If your eye is bad, your whole body be full of darkness. If then the light in you is darkness, that's odd. You have this light that's going in you, but if the light that's in you is actually not light at all, it's actually darkness, how great is the darkness? This all has to do with treasure. So there's a treasure question. Is your treasure the earthly stuff, or is it something of heaven? Then he shifts, says, wherever your treasure is, it's actually your heart. Then he says, it's actually your eye. What your eye looks at, that's your light. But probably your eye is going to go to what your heart desires, and your heart desires probably whatever you treasure. Do you know that your eye looks at things? You walk into... this week, I took the Native American, our Native American brothers. They asked to go to the mall. Okay, they actually go to the mall. I actually hate the mall. All right, and they were saying, "Why do you hate the mall?" Because it's this, because your eye goes to the treasure, and you go there. And I'm not immune from this too. I mean, I know I'm a professional Christian. And you're like, oh, Pastor SooSang, he must be a deeply holy man. No, I'm not a deeply holy man. I'm a corrupt man that needs the gospel just like anybody else. I go to the mall, and what do I see? I see everything saying, buy this, buy this, buy this, and then you will have a great life. I see lots of people, fake and pretty people. And they are going around saying, look how cool and pretty we are. And I know all of it is mostly fake. That's really what it is. And that's part of it. It's like the mall is this place that's constantly setting your eyes on the treasures of the world, but your eye is bad, so you're actually not bringing light into yourself at all. You're actually bringing darkness. That's really what he says. Then he shifts gears, and then he says this thing. You can't actually serve two masters. And here's what he's saying. Wherever your eye goes all the time, it's really probably mastering you, because that's where your heart is, because your heart is wherever you treasure. And then he ends with the verse that just really makes it very super clear. If you're unclear, this is what he's talking about. You cannot serve God and money. You cannot serve God and money. You only love one master. Now, what is we talking about here? In our life, everybody knows we need money. Now, I'm not anti-money. I was very clear last week. Money is good. Okay? I didn't say money is evil. You know what? Money is not evil. Money is good. It's a lot better than trading cattle. I want your corn. You take my cattle. It's better to pull out a credit card, okay? So in that way, it's good. But the love of money is evil. Okay? The love of money is evil. The worship of money is evil. Why? Because it'll make you hate God. Jesus makes it very clear. Your eye is your light. The light going in you will be dark. That means your heart will go to something that's dark. Your heart will be enslaved to money. That's all we're talking about here. And it shows up all the time. I want to offer you a couple of places where this darkness is really evident. You're like, this just seems like kind of mean religious stuff that you're saying. Isn't this what pastors are supposed to say? And this is really kind of a mean thing to say, Pastor. I'm not sure I really like this. Of course you don't like this, because all of us, we love money and we love loving money. We actually like it, but that's actually really dark. Now, and actually, I want to offer you this thing. Now, there's two kinds of blind light, dark light. And the first one is, I'm going to call it the quid pro quo outlook. Quid pro quo outlook. Now, what does quid pro quo means? It's Latin. It's an old phrase. It's Latin for something. Quid is something. Pro is for. quo means something else. It's something. It's like it's something for something. But the something is something else. So that's what we do with money all the time. I give you money, quid. Pro, you give me clothes. I give you money, and then you give me a job. The job makes me feel important about myself. Quid pro quo. And you know what's a quid pro quo? When it comes to money, that's the thing that's always on our mind, quid pro quo. You know what that means? Something for something. What do I get out of it? So that's the other way you put it. That's kind of the more, another way you don't use this Latin phrase, quid pro quo, but you're saying, I'm going to give you something, what do I get? What do I get out of it? And what we're saying is, and it's usually, I'm going to give you something tangible, I want something tangible. It's usually some kind of earthly thing that we value. I give you it gets even weirder. I give you this. Okay, let me get kind of like nasty about this. Nasty in the sense that it's mean, but to just show you how bad it is in our society. You wouldn't go to a prostitute, would you guys? You give her money, she gives her your body, and you get sex, right? But we have this thing today, and you have a hookup, you go on a date with the girl, and you pay for money. And in the first date, okay, maybe she's not so easy. In 1 week, after 2 or 3 dates, she's supposed to give you her body. That's like, if you ask me, that's just prostitution. So we just call it dating. Or we don't even call it dating anymore. But that's normal in our society. It's quid pro quo. What do I get out of it? And then we do the same thing. If I do this job, what do I get out of it? If I put this time in for grades, you guys are not maybe handling with money, but you guys are working hard on grades, and then you're going to work on this, and then I get a good grade. And then if I get a grade, then I go to a good college, and then I'm going to put work. I'm going to put something into it, so then I can get money. So then you can live this kind of life. That's one kind of blindness, and that can't be all there is to life. If this is the way, our whole society is so habituated to this thing, but if this is the way we always think about money, what we get out of it, I'm going to put something into it because this is what money's for. I give it so then I can get something, right? If this is how we always think about it, we're really in a really dark, enslaved, blind place, okay? Let me offer you a second piece of blindness. And for this, let me go to another passage in the Bible, Luke chapter 12. You can go to it if you want, but I asked our brother to put it up there. Luke chapter 12, verse 15. Now, this is a parallel passage. If you go to the Gospel of Luke, Jesus teaches certain things multiple times. Scholars aren't sure if this is the exact same time. Probably not. Jesus would teach his teachings in multiple cities, so he would probably say the same thing, but maybe in a slightly different way and with a slightly different emphasis. This is why the Gospels have repeat. But if you notice, there's little tweaks. And so the passage that's right after this, in the Matthew passage, is the same teaching in this Luke passage. This is the passage that's before. So that's how you know it's the parallel teaching, okay? Luke chapter 12, verse 15. And here's this is Jesus talking again. He said to them, "Take care and be on your guard against all covetousness." That's not a word that we use. You guys know, but you guys know what covetousness is? That means you want what somebody else has. That's all what covetousness is. Like somebody else has it, you want it. They have a BMW, you want it. That's covetousness. Okay, they have a pretty wife, you want that wife, or a wife that's just like her. That's covetousness. Okay? Take care and be on your guard against all covetousness. And listen to this next portion. For one's life does not consist in the abundance of his possessions. The stuff that you get, that's not your life. Your life cannot consist of the thing that you get. You give something money, and then you get something back. This can't be your life. That's Jesus, out of the wisest person, out of God's mouth. This is what he says. This can't be your life. And then he goes on to say this. And then he told them a parable, saying, now, for those of you guys, here's what a parable is. A parable is an earthly story that teaches a heavenly meaning, okay? This is the way I learned it when I was in 3rd grade. Great definition. Earthly story teaches a heavenly meaning. Here's the parable he said. The land of a rich man produced plentifully, and he thought to himself, what shall I do? For I have nowhere to store my crops. And he said, I will do this. I will tear down my barns and build larger ones, and there I will store all my grain and my goods. Now, most of us aren't farmers, so what does this mean? I don't really understand this. I'm not interested in barns and grain. He's talking about money. The land of a rich man produced plentifully. You know what that's saying? Okay, let me give you a 21st century version. The stock shot up like crazy. You own that stock, and now you're rich. You bought this house, and 10 years later, now it's worth $1 million. That literally happens here in this city. You know, you buy a house for $500,000, which was a lot of money, or your parents did, and then 5 years later, it's worth $1 million. This is the same thing. So this is absolutely relevant to our city because this stuff happens, okay? And then what will I do? I'm going to tear down my barns and I'm going to build new ones. I'm going to get new stocks. I'm going to buy another house. More money. I'm going to get more money. And then this is what he says. And then he says, and I will say to my soul, of course you don't actually say this out loud, but this is what you say to your mind inside yourself. I'll say to my soul, soul, you have ample goods laid up for many years. Relax, eat, drink, be merry. Oh, none of you ever say that, right? In this city, 25-year-olds get a job at a startup, then they work you like a dog. They work you 80 hours a week, 90 hours a week. And then if you don't come into work, they make you feel guilty for not coming into work. And then your stock option, explodes when your company goes public or gets acquired. And then you're like, and then I'm going to have like $10 million. And then you will say, soul, relax, eat, drink, and be merry. That's what you're going to say. So there are literally 25-year-olds in this city who are thinking exactly what Jesus is saying. Exactly. Now, some of you guys go, oh, I'm not going to do that. I'm not going to do the Silicon Valley game. I'll become a doctor, or I'm going to hit it big in something else. And then when you have a lot of money, then you think, oh, I can relax. I'll have security, and my life will be really good, and this will be a good life. Who in this city doesn't think this way? I don't know of a soul in this city I shouldn't say there's not one soul, but 99% plus of the souls in the city thinks exactly like this. And Jesus says, don't be like this. Then he goes this, verse 20. But God says to him, not what the guy said to his own soul, but what God said is, fool, you dumb person. This night your soul is required of you. You know what that's going to mean? You know what that means? Tonight you're going to die. And the things you have prepared, whose will they be? So is the one who lays up treasure for himself and is not rich towards God. That's what it says. So, two kinds of dark blindness. One is something for something. Quid pro quo. What do I get out of it? What do I get out of it? Well, I literally hear people say this in the church. We ask you to do something, and you have to sacrifice and give. And then they actually say, Pastor, what do I get out? I've literally heard people say that. What do I get out of it? And I'm like, do you know you're not supposed to say that in church? I was like, it's weird. What's wrong? It's like godless people outside say that. But I know you're saying that inside your head, but you literally said it out of your mouth, and that should be embarrassing. But okay, so... And then the second thing is this covetousness, acquisitiveness. Jesus says, do not be acquisitive. Do not be covetous. Do not have greed. That's what this is. One of my favorite preachers, Tim Keller, he lives in New York City where people have massive amounts of money. And he says he's literally met nobody who ever admitted they were greedy. Isn't that really weird? That's really weird. I was like, you live in New York. You never met any. He goes, I've met people who have admitted that they are lustful, that they steal, that they're prideful, okay, that they're a liar, that they have porn addiction. I've met people who admit all these things. But nobody I've ever met had told me, I'm greedy, Pastor. I'm filled with greed. Do you think you're greedy? Do you think you're greedy? We live in the New York on the West Coast. I think we're all greedy. We're just like this Luke chapter 12. I think we're all greedy. And it's a dark, dark, enslaved thing. Okay? So, all right. That was part one. That was the bad news, the mean news. So we get a nice diagnosis from the way Jesus thinks about money. And he tells us something really hard. It's hard. About our eyes, about our heart, about our enslavement. Let's go to part two. That verse 21, you can lay up for yourselves only those who, this is the way it's going to be for those who lay up treasure for themselves, but not rich toward God. In Matthew chapter 6, he says, lay up treasures for yourselves in heaven where it can't be stolen, it can't be rustful. Last week, I gave you the secret of how you give generosity toward God. How are you rich toward God? I gave you the secret last week. You give to the poor. You give to those who are hurting. You give, and you don't necessarily expect them to give you something for something. I'm going to give you money. Why don't you give me some gratitude and like praise me? You don't do that. No. Even that's a something for something. That's a quid pro quo. I gave them money. We've literally had people who've gone to Native American reservation and they said, I did all these things, but they weren't grateful. We're like, oh, so that's what you wanted out of it. You wanted their praise. See? That's not what God said. Give to them. Give to them. Now, that just seems like a hard command, right? So this is part two. There's a pathway to heal your sight and your heart. There's a pathway. It's out of this passage, but let me kind of unpack this a little bit. And what I'd like to do is that pathway, let me just give you the basic answer. It's generosity. Generosity. Give without expecting it back. Give, no quid pro quo. Just give to bless the other person, period. And stop. That's it. But most of us don't know how to be there. And I'm guilty of it too. But generosity is not easy because we're greedy. That's really the simple. If you have a hard time with generosity, then it's because you're greedy. That's pretty much what it is. It's because you're stingy. That's kind of a mean thing to say, but it's true. It's because we're full of darkness. But generosity is not just something that's a good thing to do. Generosity is not like Christian extra credit. I go to church and then of course I believe in Jesus, then I'm a Christian. But if I'm generous to that poor person over there, that's like extra credit, right? I'm okay with being a C- Christian. I don't need to be the B+, A- version because that's like extra credit guy. Pastor can be extra credit guy. I will be C- level. You know, that's not generosity. Generosity is your need. Because I can tell you you're greedy, and some of you will actually believe me. I can tell you that you and I are stingy, and some of you will actually believe me because you can see that I'm making the case from Jesus, Luke chapter 12, Matthew chapter 6, and you're like, oh gosh, I think that's real. But if you have knowledge in your head, that's very, very helpful, but that's not enough. If you want healing, you have to do, it's like a piece of medicine. If the doctor tells you, you have a really bad disease, you have cancer, and you're like, wow, I have knowledge that I have cancer, that's bad, I'm dying. But then he goes, okay, now go out and fill this prescription, serious medication. You know what generosity is? It's the pathway to healing. It's like the balm to your heart that's enslaved. It's the thing that will help your eye see something new and beautiful, that will fill your heart with something more than stuff. Okay? Now, I'm going to tell you a story because I think this will help you, and then we'll close out my message, and I'll tell you about the generosity of God. Here's a story. Who here has seen the movie Shawshank Redemption? Raise your hand. All right. Not surprising, the older side of the room. Okay? Shawshank Redemption, a lot of very ignorant people over here. Very, very ignorant people over here. Okay? You have not seen Shawshank Redemption, then you need to see Shawshank Redemption. Why? It is one of the greatest movies of the 1990s, and in my not so humble opinion, but I'm right, okay? I'm just right. Just take this, because this might as well just be true. It's not an opinion, because it's one of the greatest movies of all time. Not kidding, okay? It's like an all-timer movie. So you should watch this movie, okay? So I'm going to tell you a little story right out of the middle of Shawshank Redemption. Now, a little background. Shawshank Redemption happens inside of a prison called Shawshank. It happens in an earlier period in American history when it was a lot meaner, rougher, a lot more racist and terrible, okay? Prison was today, prison's still a terrible place, but back then it was an even worse place. So the main character is a guy named Andy Dufresne, and Andy Dufresne is some kind of bank president, well-educated, the guy who has like all these things, and he knows money. And the movie opens up where his wife cheats on Andy. And then she and her lover are shot and murdered. And actually, the movie's kind of like ambiguous as to whether Andy did it or not. Andy gets drunk, and he can't remember what happened, but he doesn't think he killed his wife. He's like, no, he says, I'm innocent. I didn't murder my wife and her lover. But, of course, the jury doesn't believe him, and he gets sent to prison for pretty much for life. So now he has a life sentence in a maximum security, awful prison. He makes friends with a guy named Red. Red is played by Morgan Freeman. You guys know who Morgan Freeman is? He's like, that older, wise, black man with like the voice of God. He's got this awesome voice, okay? That's Morgan Freeman. And Morgan Freeman is in prison, and he's there for life because he murdered somebody when he was really young. And Morgan Freeman is the guy in prison who has the skill. He knows how to get something for something. He's the quid pro quo. He's the trader. He's like, he goes, you want something, you give him something, and he'll make the deal happen. All right? That's Morgan Freeman's skill. And there's an announcement that goes out in the prison. Hey, we need like 7 guys or whatever to put the tar on the roof. So there's a roof, and they're going to take certain prisoners. And we're going to have volunteers. And that means, so you're like, who would want to volunteer to work hard? It's a hot day. You have to stay on top of a hot roof and put tar on a roof, because that's how they sealed up the roof back then. They put black tar on the roof. But actually, as soon as they hear this announcement from the prison that you have a chance to go put tar on the roof, guys want that job. You know why? Because if you're inside of a prison, it gets you a chance to go outside. For a whole week straight, for 2 weeks, however long the job takes, you get to enjoy the outdoors on a sunny day. And so Red kind of pulls his strings, and he probably bribed the guards in some special way, and he gets him and his friends, they all get to do the job of tarring the roof. So all of a sudden, it's like, hey, just coincidentally, Red and all his buddies get to tar the roof, okay, including Andy Dufresne. So they're out there working really hard, and the guards are out there watching after him, and they overhear this very interesting conversation. The leader of the guards, the captain of the guards, is a super mean, I want to use bad words okay, to describe him, because he's really one of the most evil, horrible human beings. He's basically a demonic person, okay, in this movie. And the captain of the guards, they overhear him talking, and there's a lot of swearing in this movie. I mean, there's F-bombs, blah, blah, blah. So he's talking to another guard, and he's complaining, because it's a weird thing he's complaining about. Some uncle died and left him a big chunk of money, thousands and thousands of dollars. So the other guard is saying to him, so why are you complaining? He's like, because now the government wants their piece of it, and they're going to basically steal chunks of this huge chunk of money from me. Stupid government, F and this, and blah, 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 blah. And he complains about the government and the tax that he has to pay for this inheritance. Now remember Andy was a bank president. Andy knows money. He knows everything about these laws. So Andy does something weird. Usually you never talk to this guy, because this is the most frightening, terrifying person in the prison. This person will literally, there's a sequence in the movie where they beat this guy up, and the guy can't He and this other guards, they beat this guy up so bad he can never walk and he has to eat through a straw for the rest of his life. That's what this kind of person is. So Andy goes up to the most terrifying guard there is, and he says, he asks him this really strange question. He says, do you trust your wife? You're not supposed to talk about a guy's wife. He basically thinks you're like dirt. He immediately grabs Andy by the collar, puts him right up to the edge of the roof, and he goes, this guy is going to decide to take a leap today. And he goes, you better start making sense. Dufresne, you better start making sense. And he says, there is a way you could keep all that money and the government will not take 1 penny from you. He's like, what? He's like, you're lying. Of course, he didn't say lying. He used a different swear word. He goes, you're lying. And he says, no. He says, not 1 penny. He goes, not 1 penny. He says, you can gift your wife that money, a one-time gift, and the government cannot take 1 cent of that money. He goes, but you need a lawyer, and a lawyer needs to set up the paperwork to set up the gift so you don't have to pay the tax. And he goes, lawyer, and he says all these bad words about lawyers because of course he hates lawyers. And he goes, well, I suppose I could do it for you. I know how to do it. I know how to do it. I could do it for you. All it will cost you is 2 beers apiece for my co-workers. That's what he says. 2 beers apiece for my co-workers. The guy, he's terrifying. And then he relaxes. And then the sequence changes. And Morgan Freeman, he narrates the movie. He changes. And all of a sudden, they're all sitting. And that's how it happened. That one of the most evil, horrible guards, gave us all 2 beers. And we stood out on that roof at the last day when we were about to finish. We enjoyed this incredible cold beer. Heck, we were like kings that day. We could have been tarring our own roof. And we enjoyed that beer on that roof under God's creation. So all these guys, these guys haven't drank a drop of beer in years because they're all hardened criminals. And they're all sitting there whoa, we're drinking beer. That guy actually bought us this beer. They're sitting there drinking the beer. And because Andy didn't even touch any of it. He just sat in the corner with this odd smile on his face. And so one of the prisoners picks up a beer from the ice bucket filled with ice and goes up and goes, Andy, want a cold one? And Andy just goes, it's okay. Nah, I quit drinking. He didn't even want the beer. I quit drinking. And then you hear Red say, because he goes, why did Andy do that? I think he just did it because he wanted to feel normal again. That's the way he put it. Let me say it to you a little differently. You and I were made human beings. You know what a human being is? We're made in the image of God. That's why your life, as Jesus put it, cannot consist of your possessions. You have money or you have something, and then you get it, and then you want something in it, and then you have the more stuff you have, now my life is full. It's not how it works. If you are a human being, you're made in the image of God. You know what God does? God gives. You know how God makes his heart full? He gives. It's weird. He doesn't get. He gives. And you know why he gives? He gives not to receive anything back. So it's really strange. Last week I said, how are you rich toward God? How are you generous toward God? God doesn't need anything. So how are you rich toward God? God says, I don't need anything. I own all the universe. I can make, riches just like that. So God doesn't need any possessions. How is God rich? He is rich with love toward those who have need. And if you give to the person and you bless the person that has need, then God is joyful because he loves that person. And that's what God does for his heart to be full. And he's been doing this for all eternity. And when you and I, if you want to ask me what Andy Dufresne was doing, getting beer for his coworkers, these guys who are murderers and hardened criminals, his co-workers, and they're all drinking beer, and you could, and years later in the movie, they're still telling that story. Like it was one of the greatest days of their life. You know what Andy did? He looked at his friends. He saw that they were broken and in need. He gave to them. He says, he just sat there while watching us drink his beer. That's what the guy said. He just sat there watching us drink his beer. And he looked at them, and you know what he saw? What he had was the gift. This is the gift. Last week, Jesus says, if you give in secret, the Father who sees in secret will reward you in secret. Andy Dufresne was tasting something of this. Now let me close this message. If you give out of your generosity, not to get something back, but to bless that person, now you're becoming in touch with your deepest humanity. You're becoming like God. You're in the image of God. If you do things always quid pro quo, you're actually in the image of the devil. The devil goes, I give and I get. I give and I get. That's all we do. That's all he cares about. I get, now praise me. I give, now praise me. I give you this, worship me. That's the devil's way. But God's way is he gives to bless. And then the person, when he watches the person filled with joy and blessing, then God's joy radiates. And you and I were made for that. You and I are made for the deepest humanity, to be more like God. To the deepest humanity is not just the way people act. Let's just go copy the way no, that's not the way. If you want to be deeply human, you have to become made. You have to go follow the image of God, because that's where we're made. Now here's the generosity of God. You and I, when we pray to God, here's what we pray for. Lord, help me get a really good score on this SAT. Lord, help me get that promotion. Get that promotion, land this really good job in that right company, and then, oh, Lord, let's just let my stock go up, and then I can pay off my mortgage, and then, we can go on that really great vacation. Lord, will you bless us? Will you bless us? When we mean by bless, we usually mean give me stuff. Give me money. Bless us means, and the Lord, and then we go, he doesn't love me. He doesn't actually love me because I don't have this great job. Or like, I lost my job because my company gave my job to a smart Indian guy in Mumbai, right? So we get angry. God doesn't love me. He doesn't bless me. That's what we say. But actually, God knows, which is exactly what Jesus said. Your life does not consist of possessions. He gave you your humanity. He gave you you. And then he gives you a way to heal you and let you not be like the devil, be like God, and have the joy and the reward and the riches of God, which comes from heaven, a treasure which can only come from God to the people made in the image of God, so they can be most deeply human through generosity the way he is. The deepest gift that God will ever give you is the image of God. You know how you get the image of God? Colossians chapter 1, verse 15 says this: Jesus Christ is the image. The Son is the image of the invisible God. He gave us more than money, more than possessions. He gave you and me, Jesus, the image of God, come into us. That's what he gave. That's the deepest treasure that he gave. And every time you and I say, I will be generous from Jesus for Jesus, I will, if you will remember last week's message, I will give to this poor person because Jesus identifies himself so closely with this poor person that I'm actually giving not just to a poor person, I'm actually giving to Jesus. Then you know what you're doing? You are now doing what God does all the time. The Father, Son, and Holy Spirit. The Father gave to his Son. Never with any, not pro quo, I give to bless you, my son. And you know what the Son, I give to bless you, Dad, because I love you. Never with any looking back, just to bless you, to love you. The Holy Spirit, Father, Son, and Holy Spirit have been giving to each other generously, radically, never in a stingy, greedy way, forever and forever. And then He made human beings so we could be like this too and know that joy, know that reward, know this eternal treasure that no rust, no possession can ever be stolen from you. It's a Trinitarian, eternal treasure of the image of God being played out in our hearts. And if you will choose generosity, you're choosing the image of God. You're choosing a treasure which nobody can ever take away from you. And every now and then, you get that thing that Andy Dufresne got. You're going to give to somebody. You won't always get it. Sometimes you will give to somebody and you won't see their joy, you won't see their blessedness. But every now and then you will give to bless, and then you will see right before that, you'll see their face, you will see their heart, you'll see their joy, you will see their gratitude, you'll see them becoming more human right before your sight, and you will know you will get the reward of the Father right there. That's what Andy was getting. He was getting the image of God by letting everybody drink the beers that he got. Better than Andy, let's receive Jesus and be in His image so that we'll be like God. Let's be generous. We're being generous to Native Americans today. Would you be generous and make this a habit? And the more you do this, the more rich, the more treasure you could really have. It'll never be taken from you. Let's pray.